Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. This is the task force, within the confines of the show, the first official case that they have back. We actually got introduced to Aram's parents. I don't think we've ever seen his parents over the course of the series. I think this was the first time, but obviously they think he just works behind the desk because a lot of his job is secretive. And yes, he has worked behind the desk, but he's been out in the field as well. He's a crucial part of the team, but they'll never know what he really does, what he really gets mixed up in, so they just think he has fully a desk job, but he does a lot more than that. And even the times when he is behind the desk, he's still doing a lot more than that. But for them, they're excited about this future venture business of his, because I was like, oh, you have a really good job, you're an investor, they'll come through, you get the money. But Aram's still he's hopeful, not really sure. So that means, the moment if the investor does come through, he will end up quitting the task force. But it's right, if this is the venture you want to go down, if this is the opportunity presented to you, then at the end of the day, we're happy and we'll support you. But at the end of the day, this episode circles around the SPK, another secret society of sorts, which I love that Reddington constantly points out. I've had a secret society of my own. It's you do. You have an organ. But I guess as they're not really the secret society they might have been in the past. They are a full-blown, out in the open organization, but I think there's still enough in the shadows to Skinner. So I guess that's supposed to be the joke of it. It's right, not letting on that you have a whole secret society / organization that works for you, because the FBI sure as hell doesn't know that you have this. So still kind of a little trump card you've got always sitting in your back pocket. It's probably working dividends for you in the background, whether anyone is aware of your greater plans or not. But still, he brings this case to them with the SPK because they're a religious, not necessarily organization. They were more a group that is now going into more drastic measures to the point that they are stealing religious objects and selling them, or at least it was believed they were selling them. At first it's they're actually destroying them, because the main leader behind them is Giovanni. Well, Giovanni believes in the world is misguided in its belief of these holy relics, which even Parker's supposedly, but Dembe points out, it doesn't matter whether whether it's real or not about these particular objects. For example, the main thing in this episode was the belt that the Virgin Mary wore, but it's it doesn't matter, because what it comes down to is faith. It's what people believe in, and that's what gives something its strength. It's the belief behind it, whether or not because people's faith is what kind of determines its value in that regard. But now it is a situation of we've got to stop this group because they killed 2 guards. One of the guards was on the inside, but the other guard was just an innocent person, and that's what kind of Reddington must have figured, because he was he had the one innocent guard. So not even talking about the so he must have, because there were 2 guards that were killed, but it was most likely because he already knew one had to be the insider. But the point was tracking down this group and stopping them. And I love that. I'm wondering what Reddington's initial thought was. Maybe he was planning on meeting with this. It's the hard thing. He claims not to know what he knows, that Robert was actually Giovanni. It seems for him, and he even says this line I thought was interesting. He's for the longest time he thought he had to make his fate, and now it's no, now he believes in karma, even if it is a bitch, Because it is it's funny, because he's I had no, because it's how did you know it was me? But he was no, I legitimately had no idea it was you. Karma, it's funny that. It brought you right back around to me after all this time. But because I wonder, was he going to just use their organization to get stuff, or was it just another business transaction? That's where it's you're never quite sure with Reddington. I mean, that's why Wrestler has the perspective he does, because he's just the moment they find out that Robert's actually Giovanni, they're just oh, you had to have he had to have known the entire time that this is just obviously Robert escaped our grasp because of Reddington last time, so he had to have given us this job because of that. But Dembe's yeah, he's most likely using this opportunity to get his money back from that Robert stole from him last time, but it just ended up being a happy coincidence, maybe. I don't know. It's hard. Like I said, it's hard to say. But at the heart of this, like I said, Giovanni was like, he isn't about the violence because he is a con man. It's all about stealing from people without actually hurting anyone. That's his justification. But his group, he thought he had them under control, but they don't. He don't. They not only did they kill that guard, they are also now the dude that's like, some of them back to play, but the fact is that the main dude ended up like setting up a bomb. He was going to blow up a church because it's kind of like, right, because like, yes, there is bloodshed and death in the Bible, so he was trying to do that. He was saying kind of like there's a necessary evil because they wanted to spread their message of people putting aside these like relics and put like, it's like, right, like the end of the world is coming and Jesus isn't coming, like the second coming won't happen because of your beliefs in these objects. They're people's attachment to them. It's more of a anchor than a life vest. I think it's kind of like how they view it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective to have on that situation. But like, that's why they're like fanatics, even to the point the dude, that wrestler in Park visited, set himself on fire because he was at, but it's like, because even the wife, like, she was like, yeah, I wanted him to have like a Christian group to like, the camaraderie and brotherhood of it, but she's like, I didn't know it would get so warped. That's the problem, and that's what Reddington was pointing out with Giovanni, or rather Robert, is that yes, you don't believe in all of this, but the problem is you really are good at what you do, so you were able, but the people you got mixed up in were borderlining already. They had that within them. They just needed the right silver-tongued person to like point them in the right direction. And it's like that guy in particular who's all about this, like that innate nature of being a fanatic was like already there. It just took Giovanni unleashing it essentially. So that's kind of the drawback to this situation. So I love that Reddington sends Robert in there to kind of clear, and I love he's like, right, you're the best con man I know, you got this figured out. He's like, go. He's like, thanks, I needed that, Reddington. He's like, also, if you run away again, I will put you down like a three-legged mule. It's like, jeez. Because it's like, right, you screwed me once, I am not going to let you screw me again. So, but what I also thought was kind of an interesting element that makes this case complicated too is because Denbei is who he is. He's been by Reddington's side. Of course, like he owes a lot of like we learned about Denbei and Reddington's connection like the first season about like what he owes Reddington, and Reddington took him under his wing. He's been Reddington's confidant, his protector for so many years. And so for Wrestler, it's like he can only ever see Denbei as that, which I think is hypocritical and ironic that he doesn't trust Denbei when in actuality he's the one that can't be trusted because he's, they got to take a urine test and he's faking his, and Park caught him because she was like, right, I know what it's like to have an addict around you. She had an addict for her parent, so it's like, I know all the key signs of how to cheat like a drug test. And so she's telling Wrestler, like, I want you to have your badge back. I think it's going to be a good thing for you, but I'm in a position where I can get your badge, make it so you can never get your badge back unless you get your shit together. Like, she's being because she has to be that person for him too, because it's like, I get what you're going through. I know like what you struggle with since losing Liz, but it's like, I think maybe she feels like indebted to not just doing this for his sake, but also doing it for Liz's sake to keep him on the straight and narrow, make him like, he's never going to be 100% himself again after losing Liz, because he's changed so much over the course of the series because of Liz, and falling in love with her just changed him even more. But losing the woman you love, like, it can't be easy, Well, obviously that conversation, very pertinent with this run of reviews, but, how different, it's very interesting parallel, same night and everything between this and Legacies when it comes to like how you respond to the person losing the person you love. And so a certain character is kind of taking those steps now, whereas he's had 2 years of like living in a world without the person he loves. So there's that angle to it. But I just think it's interesting, like, you're in this dishonesty lane of your life and you're getting on Denbei because you don't trust him, because it's like, right, because at one point Denbei's like, he found the doorway to where like SPK met and everything, because he knows, because Reddington showed him the real one, and he was also and told him the story how it's like a portal. It's not a mirror, it's a doorway. And it's like, oh, you knew that? Yeah, it's because Reddington taught me, but I'm not by his side. I mean, like, he refuses to trust Dembe because Dembe was always by. It's like, yeah, but he hasn't been a part of Reddington's inner circle. Yes, he knows a lot of Reddington's secrets, and I think that speaks volumes. As like, right, because he knows Dembe would never use those secrets against him because the most important ones are out. Well, Liz knew the most important secrets before she died, the most important one. But now that she's gone, it's like no one else needs to know. No one else deserves to know Reddington's truth. Liz died knowing it, and Dembe's the only other one. And it's like, it's not my truth to tell. It's no one else's truth to know. Maybe one day Agnes deserves to know. Probably like she's the only other person that deserves to know Reddington's secret, Reddington's truth. So I think that's going to be an angle to it. But other than that, it's like any other secrets of Reddington's. I know the way the operation works, but also it's like he's been out of the loop for 2 years and a lot's changed in that time. So he knows some of what Reddington does. Like he knows enough of Reddington's habits. He knows enough about Reddington for that to be. I also thought about that too. It's like, let's not forget he lost Annie, he lost Liz last season. It's like, oh, ugh. Doesn't even have Dembe by his side anymore. It's like they are where they are, but now they are on opposite sides. Because I guess maybe the argument could be because Liz, she had moments of letting a lot of stuff he did slide. I mean, hell, even Dembe did when he was working for Reddington. He let a lot of stuff slide. So I think but he's also like, everyone's kind of filling that Liz void to some extent. And I think that's what he's trying to be that firm hand of like, trying to keep Reddington in his place of like, I am doing what I'm doing because I am your friend. I am trying to help you. Everything I am doing is for your sake, whether you realize it or not. So in the grand scheme of things, I love that when he, like, obviously, Dembe and Aram, because they had to keep the whole thing at the church going. I am bouncing all over the place. I do apologize. I kind of, like, went a little everywhere. But when Dembe and Aram were working to stop the bomb and everything, and I love that, circling back to it, that Reddington shows up. The moment he found out, like, right, everyone knew that Robert was Giovanni because his prints got ran, so all the cops knew because there was an APB out on him. So the religious group turned against him, but he was like, yeah, this is all BS. And even Reddington had to be like, yeah, he sold you on a bill of goods. He's not the man that he claimed to be. And it's like, and who are you? He's like, you might as well consider me Yama, the god of death. I'm the god of death. I was like, ooh! I was like, I love that line. And it's like, well, if you're the god of death, then our guns shouldn't hurt you. He's like, well, we'll just have to find out. And we goes full John Wick in this piece. Bam, bam, bam. I was like, when are we going to get to see what she... Oh, there we go. Like, yo, even in not looking, bam, behind her. I'm like, yeah. You knew they had to, like, show you, like, oh, yeah, like, why she's the one Reddington keeps by his side now. It's like, of course. Like, you knew she had to be a beast. And she is. And she's like, ooh. That's pretty... way to showcase what she's capable of. And I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg. But it's like, yeah, she went beast mode on in that moment. I loved it. But yeah, they walked away. Reddington kept the belt, and he was going to go leave with... he was going to leave with Robert, but Dembe was there, and Dembe arrested him. Because the problem is, Dembe will always, like, because it's like, right, like, Dembe doesn't have the trust of the rest of the team because of his connection to Reddington. And Reddington's like, yeah, because you have 2 feet and you have a foot in both worlds. Which Dembe was like, no, I don't. I've chosen my side because he was like, oh, it's about, loyalty is not, because Dembe is always that. That's what he is at his heart. He is a loyal person. So he is loyal to his friend, but also it is an extent of like, he is loyal to the badge, and his loyalty to that comes first and foremost. So Robert sadly gets arrested, but even, Reddington's like, I doubt we've heard the last of Robert. I mean, he's like, if I ever get bored, I might decide to break him out of prison just so I can one-up him at least one time, So Dembe kind of drew the lines in the sand, and now it's like, right, they arrested Robert, who will tell them the rest of the SPK members, as well as the people he sold the artifacts to. But Wrestler is like, yeah, but was it true that you did what he's like, I'm not here to take some, like, test for your trust, and walks away. It's like, he's doing this for himself, to prove to himself, like, it's not about proving it to wrestler. It's about proving it to himself. Like, I can't just put in all the work. You have to make an effort to trust me. But I mean, obviously, like, it took him a long time to trust Liz too, for them to get to where they are. Because at the beginning, he didn't trust Liz because, well, it was a combination of not trusting her because of her connection to Reddington. Mainly because it's like, right, because he wanted to talk to you out of anybody, even though he was the more superior, like, FBI agent at the time. Like ranking wise, because he was like obviously been an FBI agent longer. She's a profiler, and that whole angle to it. So because of that, you know, there was that jealousy. There was also that distrust when it came to Liz. So he was kind of giving Dembe that same, like, you know. But I think eventually he will maybe because of where he is mentally right now, he's not in a spot to really, because Dembe is associated with Reddington. He has his issues with Reddington, and so by proxy, Dembe, like, you know, by extension, Dembe suffers those same, you know, issues. So, but even though he got his angel investor, Aram decided to have his partner buy him out. So it's enough to give his mom like a new kitchen. But this for him is like, today was a good day. We helped save a lot of people. But, you know, Harold's like, yeah, but not every day is going to be a good day. And he's like, yeah. And on those days, I might regret it, but, you know, not as much. He's like, the fact of the matter is, I feel like this is where I belong. And Harold's happy to have him. And he's just like, you know, it's like, yeah, happy to like fully be back. No longer like doesn't have a foot in both worlds for him. It's like, you know, I think the last person who kind of does now, and, you know, maybe to an extent Wrestler does, but Park kind of is in that spot too. So I think we've got to fix her situation to be what it needs to be currently, from what it is currently, because she still probably hasn't told her hubby, like, the truth and the nature of everything that she's up to. So that's probably still something the team has to fix and work on, and I'm sure that's going to become a plot point at a later point. Well, probably sooner rather than later. While Wrestler's, you know, dealing with his own thing. So she's balancing, like, her whole... it's going to be interesting because you're going to be there, like, to make sure Wrestler stays on the right path while also, like, balancing your, like, right, not telling your hubby, like I said, what you're really up to and everything. So that's definitely going to be interesting. But ultimately... Reddington brought up something online I thought was interesting. Well, it's like, yeah, like, he's like, for him, like, the belt isn't as awesome because, like, he's like, the reverence we have of the past and stuff like that, and kind of like our obsession and our reverence of it, I thought was kind of an interesting point for him. I think it's an interesting point to kind of get brought up, especially because, like, he wants to meet Agnes and, like, he wanted to be in her life. So he talked to Harold, who talked to his wife, and it's like, all right, so they made a condition. He can't be alone with Agnes, so someone has to be there to supervise it, and that's Harold. Initially, Reddington's reluctant about it because for him, it's like he's so used to dictating the boundaries of anything. Like, that's always like how he's kept control of any situation. Is like, right, I control the situation. So now he has to kind of bend to what Harold and his wife want, but it's also like, right, I had to respect that. I don't like it, but I have to accept it because the alternative of not having being a part of Agnes's life in any shape or form is a far worse fate. So it's like, right, you want to meet her now? He's like, wait, right now? It's like, yeah, why not? And it's just like, okay. And then he's just like, no, you look great. And then she sees him and she's like, hey. He's like, you might not recognize me. She's like, I know you. He's like, you do? She's like, yeah. She's like, you're Pinky. And he's like, yeah, I'm Pinky. But it's like the line of, yeah, we sell boats and it was the day before my mom died. Or like the day before my mom died. Or the day, you get what I was trying to say. And in that moment he stops because almost Reddington was probably hoping, like, right, like, she might not remember me, but at the very least, I'll be in her life and everything. I can introduce her myself. Because I thought it was an interesting conversation he had earlier with Harold about, right, it's like, yeah, but you are who you are. I'm not going to lie to her. Because he was like, oh, you could just say, like, I'm someone else. He's like, but I'm not going to lie to her. And he's like, well, what, you do still let her believe in Santa? He's like, I let her believe in Mips. And he's like, hey, and if the shoe fits. But for Agnes, it's like, yeah, I remember you, and he's kind of happy about it, but it also comes with a sad thing of like, Right. You'll be associated with a good memory. That's good. And she remembers you. That's good. But also, it's also associated with a bad memory because it's like, yeah, it's one of the last times she got to hang out with her mom. It was like it was a fun day before like the day before she lost her mom. So it's like it's always going to be associated with that. So there's a tug and pull. There's a happiness to it because of the happy memories, but also a shadowy sadness that also will always be cast because it being the last good day, but maybe that makes it something that Agnes cherishes even more, So, because I'm sure, like, looking at her just as a constant reminder of, like, right, like, your daughter's gone, and the least you can do is be there, because you weren't able to be there for your daughter when she was about the same. Well, obviously, Agnes is older, but you weren't able to be there for your daughter in the younger years. You could be from the shadows, but you want to. That's why he's intent on doing things differently. Because I wasn't there for her then. I'll be here for Agnes when I can be. Like he was, Reddington was there for Agnes at other points in time when she was young. Like I said, but it's much like the Liz thing of like it was from the shadows and. I'm curious to see. I get the feeling, and maybe I'm wrong about this, I get the feeling like maybe when this series is over, like whenever they do decide to end this series, I get the feeling like I could definitely see the series finale being a time skip, where we get like a much older Agnes, that she's about like, not necessarily, she might be a teenager or something like that at that point in time, but I think, I don't know. Will Reddington want to pass it on? Because it stays in the family. The Blacklist and everything, it's in the family. But part of me wonders, will she eventually grow up to become an FBI agent? But will she control the whole Blacklist? Like, because it is her birthright, This whole operation, it was supposed to go to her mom. But obviously Reddington would never do that because it's like, well, I chose my successor before and things went super sideways. So, but it's like, will you do it again and try and pass it to your grand? Like, that's why I could see like them potentially in the series finale doing like a time skip. And an older Agnes has control of the whole operation. Not necessarily that she's the new Reddington, but she's kind of like the new Liz, playing the role of a Reddington. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. That's kind of where my thought has been about, like, potentially. That's why, like, I figured they were going to do maybe a time skip thing. Like, I just wasn't sure, like, how much time they were going to skip. They only did 2 years, but I think eventually down the road, it's probably, like I said, it's going to be like a final episode thing of, like, right, this is going to be like how everything ends with probably like an older Agnes taking over things if they decide to go down that route. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out, but that's going to be quite a ways into the future, I'm sure. I don't know if they've even like they'll probably keep going with the show as long as like NBC keeps giving them new seasons. So we'll see. But nevertheless, I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.